and even conclude that based on what we've done on this campaign and on a lot of other campaigns, nothing tells you a fuller story than data. And we had the advantage of data on this campaign because one of the things we did from the onset is understand on our plan that the outdoor billboards are going to make a lot of noise. But that in its own is not an end. What we're trying to do is then push that to online, where we can measure the data. And I think Jeff Bezos is justified in his statement that in God we trust. Everyone else must bring their data.
Their data.
I think every day we're dealing with data that we could actually use to shift our approach to, as Jay said before, that it's the steps that we're reiterating, not the objectives. The data tells us that we're dealing with 300,000 people in Harare, which is a capital city, who are engaged on this issue. But we've got 3,000 people in a remote area that no one is looking at, that are engaged in another issue. Maybe it's important for us to amplify that issue because there are people that are engaged to it. And all those things come when you start paying attention to data. Data also tells us the amount of responses we're getting and what sort of responses we're getting to it. And what we did is to then create a data dashboard of what we're getting. It was allowing us for every Friday that we had a meeting on what happens next week, we're looking at the data of what happened in that week. So once you're implementing a campaign and you understand your audience and you've got tailor-made messages to sift through your demographic, you would need to rely on data for continuity. And I think we did that very well with this campaign.
I think we every week we had to meet and look at our reach. We had to look at our data on the different platforms, offline and online. So we could even look at our hits on Twitter, we could look at on our hits on Facebook, on Instagram, but also on the road traffic itself in terms of those people that are seeing our billboards, and that would inform the next action. But it was also an issue in terms of understanding your audience. You need to know where you're going to get them, which brought in the issue of the multi-channel campaign that we ran. So being a multi-channel campaign that we had in How Far, in terms of outdoor, in terms of social media, in terms of household, very personalized campaigning, it was based on understanding our audience and where it was that in terms of that audience and how we get there. We had to find ways, routes, and channels of getting to those people, and that was very important. So we would know that for our rural community, they're not going to be on Twitter, but they are almost in terms of mobile telephone penetration in Zimbabwe, we are high above there. But people are not on Twitter, they're not on Instagram, they're on WhatsApp. So how are we going to create on SMS? Yes. How are we going to make use of bulk SMS? How are we going to make use of WhatsApp chat rooms? How are we going to make use of Twitter for a certain niche audience that we had? How are we going to use of the Facebook, those who want to tell the story to their loved ones and connect with their old friends and the like? So it was disaggregating our audience. And I think for me, the big lesson is disaggregating our audience according to our understanding, then their aspirations, where they are, and what kind of message we're going to get to them with. Some of them just needed, for example, on Instagram, they just needed the pictures of certain projects. So we gave them that this is the project in terms of what the government has been doing. This is how Mashingo Bedbridge Highway is going in terms of rehabilitation. And it is costing this much. This is how much Robert Mugabe International Airport is going in terms of progress, and it is costing this much.
Contrary to the hype.
Contrary to the hype. So let's discuss. Let's put this beyond, public debate and public scrutiny. So it is understanding all those dynamics around your audience that will bring the traction that we're talking about, that will bring the connection that we're talking about. If it's smallholder farmers, we also look at it. The government is talking about sustainable agriculture. There is, what is it called? Pfumvudza. Pfumvudza has taken so much money. It is taking so much in terms of your labor intensive. Is it gender sensitive? The labor that you have to put into it. We ask the critical questions because you understand your audience and you understand the questions that they need you to ask, and you ask those questions, and you know which tool and mechanism and platform you have to get to your audience with. I think we get so much hyped up when it comes to civil society organizations to being on certain social media platforms, but some of them are actually so elitist, so out of reach and out of touch with the people that we want to reach out to, especially if we're targeting movement building, where we want each individual to have a voice. And I think in our campaign, the idea was, how do we ensure that everyone has a voice to ask their question, their how far question?
Yeah, I would sum it off with just what I've said about data, that if you're looking at cultivating a sentiment on an inclusive basis and say, I want to understand what is happening to John Doe, who's an urban dweller, to Jen Doe, who's a rural dweller, and what challenges they face. You can never make a decision on what to say and what to not say if you do not have the data. So to sum this message concept, once you have a message, you understand your audience, you find a connection point, you find your connection point, and you need to go back to your data as you execute to say, what is my data telling me? Because data tells the full story, right?
It does.